In this pod-slice summary of the Modern Wisdom podcast, Chris Williamson and Douglas Murray explore several contemporary themes, including the prediction of societal changes, marketing strategies, the concept of performative empathy, and the declining birth rates in the Western world. They also dissect the increasing struggle society faces in agreeing on fundamental facts due to the influence of various media platforms. Douglas Murray discusses his book, The Strange Death of Europe, published in 2017, explaining how his predictions about the transformation of many Western countries due to demographic change are sadly coming true. He emphasized that predicting such developments offers no pleasure, as these changes denote a worrisome evolution that he did not eagerly anticipate. Next, they explore changes in Victoria's secret marketing strategy, deciding to switch back to conventionally attractive models. Discussing the body positivity movement and the societal tendency to glorify short-term gratification, often at the expense of long-term outcomes, Murray argues for the representation of healthy rather than anorexic or morbidly obese models. The duo also discusses empathy as a popular societal trait, albeit often optimized for its immediacy, sometimes at the cost of the ultimate outcome. This shallow pond of empathy, as Williamson refers, is a nod to the tendency of society favoring gestures that signal goodness even if they might be detrimental in the long run. Furthermore, they discuss intergenerational competition theory and the challenges faced by millennials and Gen Z in comparison to previous generations, such as difficulties in accessing the property ladder. They note that while younger generations perceive their parents as having had it easier, each generation faces its distinct challenges, such as housing affordability and high taxation rates. Finally, they unpack the fundamental problem of the inability to agree on fundamental facts and truths due to the influence of social media. Resulting from this issue is an ensuing difficulty in understanding and agreeing on historical events, creating a society divided in opinion and belief. They note that this amplification of disagreement has notably led to broadly differing interpretations of the COVID-19 pandemic and political occurrences such as election results. In this part of the podcast, the dynamic duo of Chris Williamson and Douglas Murray further delve into our society's struggle with truth. Murray asserts that truth has been sacrificed on both the political right and left, something he believes we see clearly in universities. The pursuit of truth, which traditionally underpins academic inquiry, has been replaced with avoiding any truths that may cause discomfort or offense. Encouraging listeners to challenge their beliefs, Murray holds that if you can't defend your views, they aren't persuasive or worth much interest. He forwards an idea, originally presented by Jonathan Swift, stating that if a person cannot be reasoned out of a position they weren't reasoned into, you're dealing with dogma rather than a rational belief or ideology. Continuing with the theme of dogma, the discussion shifts to the collapse of grand narratives, particularly religion. Williamson quizzes Murray on whether he thinks the deconstruction of religion was a net good or bad. Murray, drawing an analogy between children who are adept at disassembling bicycles but struggle to reassemble them, suggests that society might only realize the function of its grand narratives once they're taken apart and can't be reconstructed. He warns against new religions stepping into the void that religion used to fill, the religion of body positivity, gender, race, and others, which can be just as dogmatic and potentially harmful as any other belief system. The conversation then meanders to the concept of optimization and the trade-offs every individual and society at large must face. Drawing from personal experience, Williamson notes that if the cost of any decision compromises his mental peace, it's too high a cost to pay. Meanwhile, Murray expresses fondness for the relative peace he finds in his private life. There's also a witty takedown of pop culture's hypocrisy, citing the incidents involving pop artist Lizzo and talk show host Ellen DeGeneres. Both public figures are known for their expressed support of body positivity and nicety, but their actions have suggested otherwise, leading Murray to imply that public personas can often be deceiving. He emphasizes that figures who seem tough in the public eye can sometimes be quite soft-hearted privately, and vice versa. In closing, the pair dissects the ways our culture worships the victim, theorizing that some individuals may discourage friends from losing weight to eliminate them as competition, once again highlighting the many complex layers that make up our societal norms and behaviors. In their lively conversation, Chris Williamson and Douglas Murray navigate the importance of competition, the impact of material conditions and personal demeanors, society's perverse fascination with unearthing past prejudices, and the disturbing trend of misogynistic lyrics in popular music. The duo contemplates on the nature of competition and human propensity for schadenfreude. They suggest that people may derive pleasure from the misfortunes or struggles of others, as it gives them a competitive edge. They also discuss how baldness or weight gain in others can result in feelings of relative superiority. Exploring the topic of material conditions, the pair illuminate the surprising lack of correlation between wealth and happiness. The saying, "rich people can be bitter idiots and poor people can be grateful heroes," encapsulates the inherent subjectivity and uniqueness of human experience. They expose a common fallacy, equating material wealth to happiness, by asserting that everyone is a master of their own fate. In an interesting turn, they scrutinize the hypocrisy of judging people of the past by the moral and ethical standards of the present. They deride this as a form of cultural vanity, illustrating it through the example of George Orwell, known to have harbored some homophobic thoughts. Yet they argue that judging him by today's standards is nonsensical. They also warn against the potential dangers of overlooking the wisdom of the past and assert that judging past luminaries, like Orwell and Shakespeare, is not as critical as understanding the lessons they hold for us. In the final stretch of this part of the podcast, Jungkook, the lead singer of BTS, comes under scrutiny for changing his music to contain more misogynistic lyrics. They highlight the lyrics' explicit language and objectification of women. This change is significant because Jungkook and BTS were initially known for their deliberate stance of refraining from objectifying or sexualizing women in their music. The discussion veers towards the possibility of such derogatory lyrics adversely affecting women's mental health, although they do add a humorous edge to the conversation. Throughout this part of the podcast, the pair maintain a constant thread of self-deprecating humor, thoughtful insights, and wisdom, combined with a keen grasp of the complexities of human nature. In the detailed discussion that follows, Williamson and Murray engage in a lively debate surrounding the effects of popular culture on society. Murray talks about his dislike for certain rap music played at his gym, focusing on the explicit language used, and how he believes it negatively impacts our mental background. They postulate on the broad reach of popular culture, considering its significant influence on people's self-perception and societal norms. However, they mention that such external factors are not the core reason for unhappiness, suggesting that individuals can opt out of its sphere of influence, using the term its creature to describe those who succumb completely to its sway. They further explore cultural dynamics like cancel culture, how the plight against misogynistic practices like men usually controlling office temperatures contrasts wildly with the often derogatory and objectifying lyrics present in popular music. The conversation captures their astonishment at society's seeming indifference towards music lyrics that may be detrimental to women's mental health, while fervently advocating for issues like gender-neutral pronouns and climate-friendly practices. Adding on, there's a probing analysis of the intricate layers of societal norms and perceptions. Touching on the Israel-Palestine conflict, Williamson and Murray discuss the notion of hypocrisy, where certain controversial topics garner immense attention, while others of equal or even greater gravity are largely ignored. They coin this as cultural and societal inconsistencies, manifesting as convenient selective outrage. They delve into discussions about double standards today, such as immigrants being labeled as colonizers in certain contexts, while not in others. They assert it's a restrictive interpretation focused primarily on selective cases, creating an unbalanced view of global events. They discuss the internet's role in highlighting people's inconsistencies or hypocrisy with grandeur, stating that people are usually allowed to evolve in their views or opinions. They conclude that despite inconsistencies, standing up for loved ones, country, or oneself is of higher priority and certainly more admirable. It's also pointed out that it's easier to brand someone as insincere or unauthentic rather than engaging with their views to have a meaningful conversation. Finally, the discussion spirals into an introspective discourse questioning the legitimacy of public figures and their opinions. They assert that public figures are often criticized for changing their initial positions or views. However, they insist that growth and evolution of ideas are a natural part of human life and should be welcomed instead of looked at with skepticism. They mention Michael Malice's hierarchy of grifters and its implications for how the public perceives individuals, framing it as low-resolution explanations for phenomena that are inherently more complicated and nuanced. In this section of the Modern Wisdom podcast, host Chris Williamson and guest Douglas Murray delve into the intricacies of conspiracy theories, and the psychology that drives people to believe them. Murray addresses how the very nature of conspiracy theories, in acting as low-resolution explanations for complex phenomena, provides comfort to those who struggle with dealing with the chaos of the world. Some of these conspiracy theories even find a home within socio-political landscapes, driven both by personal paranoia and collective societal disillusionment. The example of the Middle Eastern worldview, where painful contradictions exist due to disparities between religious beliefs and socioeconomic realities, further exemplifies this. Significantly, Williamson and Murray analyze a common contradiction that exists within society today. The government is perceived as inefficient, yet still believed to mastermind elaborate conspiracies, demonstrating the very human struggle with cognitive dissonance, where paradoxical ideas are held simultaneously. There is also a compelling discussion on the societal pressure exerted on individuals to have strong opinions about key issues, regardless of their knowledge or expertise in that area. They emphasize the need for humility and knowledge before forming opinions and criticize the culture of people asserting unresearched views under the guise of societal obligations. Tackling the subject of generational ideology, they examine a recent poll surveying dating preferences among millennials. It portrays how individual socio-political beliefs can influence personal relationships in this modern digital age. This debate reinforces the increasing polarization of society, where affinities to political camps or ideologies like the MAGA Republicans, communists, or even popular podcast hosts like Joe Rogan can potentially impact one's attractiveness as a potential partner. The host and guest also delve into the dynamics of media influence, underscoring the damaging effects of unqualified opinion broadcasting on national television. This extends to the commentary on the Israel-Palestine conflict and other geopolitical issues made by people who lack first-hand experience or substantial understanding. Lastly, the point is driven home using the case of widespread apathy towards serious issues like the Yemen crisis, contrasting sharply with more publicized issues. It raises the question of selective outrage, embedded hypocrisy, and how deep-rooted prejudices, in this case anti-Semitism, fuel these inconsistent reactions. This dialogue exposes the institutionalized bias and selective attention paid to international crises, reflecting both individual prejudices and collective social preferences. In their illuminating discussion, Chris Williamson and Douglas Murray talk about conspiracy theories, the societal urge for people to form opinions on crucial issues, regardless of their expertise, the impact on individual socio-political beliefs on dating preferences, and various themes related to media influence. The two spend a significant amount of time discussing courage and cowardice. Referencing a personal experience, Murray underscores the importance of being surrounded by courageous people. He defines courage not only as physical bravery, but also as mental bravery, the ability to say things that are not popular or safe. In this context, an important distinction is made between dangers that are chosen and dangers that one is thrust into unexpectedly. Williamson and Murray also discuss navigating life and making choices. A shared sentiment between them is the importance of living your life instead of living someone else's opinion. Williamson shares an impactful quote that resonates with both him and Murray. "I could always hear my better self clearing his throat in the room next door." The importance of standing up against injustice, even in the face of potential danger, is also highlighted. Case studies are discussed, such as the New York subway events, where people face dangerous situations unexpectedly. These examples serve as cautionary tales about the possible repercussions of interfering in violent situations, but also highlight the social responsibility to intervene in light of perceived injustice. On a pedagogical note, the dialogues uncover deep-rooted sociological dynamics, previewing a society teeming with insufficiently examined opinions, pervasive echo chamber thinking, and a suppression of idiosyncratic worldview. These insights could shape how listeners might respond to societal pressures, conflict, or crises in the future. In a section of this captivating dialogue, Williamson and Murray delve into the fascinating phenomena of victimhood culture and perseverance through adversity. They refute the notion of life being devoid of difficulties and echo C.S. Lewis's message not to wait for optimal conditions before moving forward. As per Lewis's sermon in Oxford, 1939, human life thrives amidst hardships. The point he makes is that humans need to adapt and continue pursuing their purpose despite obstacles. Otherwise, that pursuit may never begin. This perspective is echoed by the anecdotes of people continuing their studies and living their lives amidst war-torn cities. They advocate for living and making impact in the here and now, instead of obsessing over changing circumstances beyond control. Notably, they firmly stand against the rise of victimhood culture, dismissing it as an undesirable emotion, signaling an undesirable person, rather than an actual predicament. They further deliberate on the roles and expectations of men and women in society, especially in times of crisis. They point out that society's refutation of fundamental, starkest differences between sexes is an unrealistic luxury belief that doesn't align with reality. This conversation extends to modern portrayals of traditional stories where female characters are reimagined to not need men for their success or happiness. They argue that these revisions, instead of empowering women, rewind cultural progress by oversimplifying the narratives and ignoring the importance of symbiotic relationships and mutual respect between genders. In essence, they advocate for resilience, courage, and a certain level of pragmatism in constantly evolving societal expectations and norms. In this intriguing continuation, Williamson and Murray discuss the reimagining and reinterpretation of traditional stories for modern media. They cite Disney's reshoots for Snow White as a case in point. The company reconceived the classic tale by diversifying the dwarf characters. However, this decision sparked backlash, with Equity Card carrying dwarf actors arguing that an opportunity for representation had been needlessly missed. This incident animates the tensions between representation, authenticity, and the art of acting. The conversation extends to the amusing anecdote of a charity shop in Swansea urging people not to donate sex toys. This principle of discernment with regards to donations segues into a critique of a school in Lafayette. The school decided not to celebrate Halloween, arguing it lacked inclusivity, but proceeded to celebrate LGBT plus History Month. From there, Williamson and Murray explore pressing social and cultural issues. They note the dominance of certain narratives that foster anxiety and pessimism about the future. For instance, the green apocalyptic narrative, they argue, is particularly detrimental to young people's mental health by suggesting imminent global catastrophe. Murray insists the situation suggests a problem requiring management rather than an immediate crisis. He critiques such narratives as anti-human, as they restrict mobility and freedom to market-driven demands, such as limiting flights due to environmental concerns. He further coins the current cultural narrative as unheroic, a marked departure from valuing life as an adventure. They advocate for viewing life with a sense of adventure, as a heroic quest and tailoring one's path rather than succumbing to societal narratives. Both agree on rejecting a conformist life that does not bring fulfillment or happiness. Instead, they call for courage, adventure, and personal fulfillment as essential human pursuits. In quoting Jordan Peterson, they reinforce the view that life isn't about seeking happiness, but discovering meaning, each person's distinct journey and narrative. The discussion further delves into the excitement and ambiguity of life. The conversation explores how one's journey can be equated with leaving a village or town to risk, fail, or succeed in a city. They underscore that this narrative is fueled by the fear of failure and the thrill of success, a tension intrinsic to human experience. Williamson and Murray draw attention to the marvel and harshness of cities like New York, where success and desperation coexist. They imply that witnessing both extremes continually impacts individuals, exposing them to the extent of their possible success or failure. Intriguingly, the dialogue takes a dive into a study by Candice Blake from Australia. Her research unveils that high wealth inequality predicts increased sexualization of women in online dating profiles. In environments displaying vast wealth gaps, women tend to present more sexualized images to secure partners at the high end of wealth distribution. They further explore how societal norms and expectations have led to the phenomenon of faking it. For instance, in the outskirts of Delhi, men were known to borrow items such as fancy shoes or a motorbike to appear more desirable when dating. This behavior reflects a broader pattern of individuals living or pretending to live beyond their means, primarily to attract a mate. The conversation concludes with Douglas Murray sharing his upcoming plans, which involve visiting war zones to provide first-hand reports. Host Chris Williamson ends the segment by recommending his listeners to tune into his podcast episode with Jordan Peterson. Their nuanced exploration of life's adventures and uncertainties underlines the narrative of life being about finding meaning rather than chasing happiness. Check out the full podcast by clicking the link in the description below. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for listening to this podcast summary episode of The Pod Slice.